Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is a screencast-o-matic presentation and recording for the part of the lesson that has us looking at an introduction to an overview of Thailand, geography, history, and culture. Before we get started, please let me encourage you to open up to today's lesson, scroll down the correct section, and get ready to answer the key concept questions and complete the exercises that correspond with each reading passage. Please remember that you can replay any part of this presentation for detail, clarity, or repetition later on. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to Thailand. An introduction. Geography. Thailand is located in Southeast Asia. It borders Myanmar to the west, Cambodia and Laos to the east, and Malaysia to the south. The country has a varied landscape with mountains in the north, fertile plains in the center, and sandy beaches in the south. Nature. The northern and western parts of Thailand are heavily forested, and these regions are home to the most of its wildlife. Some notable mammal species include tigers, leopards, and elephants. History. Between the 9th and 13th centuries, Thailand was ruled by a Khmer Empire. The empire was overthrown by several local Thai chiefs who established the Thai kingdom in 1238. The kingdom was defeated in 1350 and other dynasties emerged. The Chakri kingdom was established in 1782 and exists to this day. People. The Thai people make up a vast majority of the population. The largest minority groups include the Chinese, Malays, and Khmer. About half the population lives in the rural parts of the country. Economy. The service and agriculture industries are the largest sectors of the Thai economy. About one-third of the people works on farms, and half the population works in the service sector. Tourism is the most important service. Thailand is the most visited country in the Southeast Asia, and almost 40 million tourist arrivals per year. Government. Thailand is a constitutional monarchy, with the Thai monarch as the head of state. The government is led by a prime minister who is appointed by the monarch but is usually the leader of the largest political party. At this time, you may proceed to answer the key concept questions and complete the exercises to that part of the reading. Now let's proceed to the next part of our presentation, on geography. Thailand can be divided into four main geographic regions: mountains in the north, a plateau in the east, a river valley in the center, and a narrow strip of land in the south. The Thai people often describe the shape of their country as an elephant's head. The northern and eastern parts form the head and the ears, while the southern and narrow strip resembles the trunk. Much of northern Thailand is landlocked region that is covered in mountains. Many of its peaks reach heights of over 8,000 feet, and these mountains are heavily forested and stretch along the western border with Myanmar, to the border with Malaysia and the south. Doi Ethanan is Thailand's highest point at an altitude of 8,415 feet. It is part of the Tannan Tung Chai Range in northwestern part of the country. There are various rivers flowing through this region. These rivers cut deep, narrow valleys through the mountains, and most of these rivers are tributaries of the Chao Phraya, which runs through the center of Thailand before it empties into the Gulf of Thailand. The central part of Thailand is dominated by the Chao Phraya River Basin. It is a fertile region that is best known as the Rice Bowl of Asia. Northeast Thailand is an area with plains and low-rolling hills called the Khotrak Plateau, and the Mekong River flows through this plateau, which forms much of the natural border with Laos. Southern Thailand is a narrow strip of land that is part of the Malay Peninsula, and the Malay Peninsula is a 700-mile landmass that stretches into the South China Sea. It is a landscape of rolling hills, mountains, and little flat land. The coastal areas are home to white sand beaches and tropical islands. At this time, you may go ahead and answer the key concept questions and complete the exercises that correspond with that reading. Now let's move on to the next section here on history. The Mon people were the first people to establish powerful kingdoms in Thailand between the 6th and 8th centuries. These kingdoms came in contact with neighboring Southeast Asian countries and used some of their political, cultural, and religious ideas. During this time, Buddhism emerged as the most dominant religion in Thailand. And in the early 11th century, the Khmer people from modern-day Cambodia invaded eastern Thailand and made it part of the Khmer Empire. The Thai people defeated the Khmer and established the Sukhothai kingdom in 1238. The Thai are an ethnic group from southwest China who settled in Thailand in the 10th century, and this kingdom, as well as the kingdoms that followed, were known as the Siamese kingdoms. The Thai people who make up the ethnic majority in Thailand today consider the Sukhothai kingdom at the beginning of their history. In the mid-14th century, the Ayutthaya kingdom emerged in southern Thailand, and they defeated the Sukhothai about a century later and added its territory in northern Thailand to their kingdom. Various European countries, including Portugal, Britain, France, made contact with the Ayutthaya kingdom and made trade agreements in the mid-1600s. The Oyyotaya began to fear an invasion of the Europeans, so they closed their borders for 150 years. It was during this time that the Ayutthaya kingdom experienced its golden age as the economy was booming and its culture flourished. The Ayutthaya kingdom came to an end after a series of invasions from the Burmese, which is modern-day Myanmar, in 1767. Now, in 1782, the Chakri kingdom rose to power and moved the capital to Bangkok. The kingdom was founded by Ramai I, who played an important role in forcing out the Burmese occupiers. During this time, many Southeastern Asian countries were colonized by European powers. For example, Myanmar and Malaysia were colonized by the British, and Cambodia and Vietnam were colonized by France. Thailand was one of the few Asian countries that managed to stay independent, and in 1932, the military took control of the government and removed the monarch from power. They agreed to keep the monarchy, but the role of the king became ceremonial. So in 1939, the country's name was changed from Siam to Thailand. At this time, you may proceed to answer the key concept questions and complete the exercises that correspond with that reading. Now let's move on to the next section on the royal family. So Thailand has been ruled by many kings since the 13th century. The House of Chakri is the current royal family of Thailand. The family has ruled the country since 1782. After the Siamese Revolution in 1932, Thailand became a constitutional monarchy, and a constitutional monarchy is a system of government that is similar to that of the United Kingdom. The King of Thailand is the head state but has very limited political power. His role is mostly ceremonial and serves as a symbol for national identity and unity. The government is led by a prime minister. Before the revolution, Thailand has an absolute monarchy, which the king had absolute power. King Maha Vajiralongkorn is the 10th and current king of the House of Chakri. His father, King Bumibol Adulyadej, served for 68 years, making him the longest reigning monarch in Thai history, from 1946 to 2016. He was incredibly popular among the Thai people because he resolved several political crises and was committed to helping the country's poorest people. Unlike his father, the current king is not very popular and is often criticized because of his unroyal behavior. He has never shown much interest in his royal duties and spent most of his time in a luxury hotel in Germany living a jet-set lifestyle. The royal family has 19 palaces. The Grand Palace in Bangkok is the official residence of the Thai royal family, but is only used for ceremonial events. The palace was built in 1782 and has been the royal residence ever since. Dusit Palace, also in Bangkok, is the private residence of the family. Better not insult the king. Thailand has very strict laws that forbid insulting or making fun of the royal family. These laws are known as lèse-majesté and are the strictest in the world, with punishment up to 15 years in jail. In recent years, an increasing number of Thai people want to get rid of these laws, and they believe that it's within their limits of freedom that has no place in the 21st century. At this time, you may move on to complete the key concept questions or complete the exercises that correspond with this reading, and we will move on to the next section on protests. In 1932, during the Siamese Revolution, the Thai people forced the king to give up his political powers. They allowed the royal family to stay, but the role would become ceremonial only. Despite the revolution, the Thai royal family is immensely popular among the most Thai citizens. The Siamese Revolution was peaceful, but it made the country politically unstable. Since the revolution, 17 different governments have been overthrown by the military. Thai society can be divided into two groups: supporters of the royal family, yellow shirts, and a group that wants more democracy, red shirts. The Thai government is often accused of being corrupt and undemocratic. Because of this, opponents and supporters of the government often hit the streets to demonstrate. This frequently results in clashes with the police and the military. And the group with the yellow shirts is comprised of supporters of the royal family and military, and the wealthy elite. They believe that the red shirts are too uneducated to vote and consider the king as their father. The yellow shirts want a larger role for the monarch in this decision-making process of the government. This group is allied to a political party called the Democratic Party. The group of red shirts is a mix of people with different ideas. Some of them support the king and the monarchy, while other red shirts are against the monarchy. Some are communists, while others are capitalists, and the group generally consists of farmers and people with low income for the most part. Since the Reds formed the majority, they won most of the government elections. At this time, you may go ahead and answer the key concept questions or complete the exercises that correspond with that reading. Let's move on to the next section here on culture of Thailand. Culture. Thai culture has been influenced by various foreign cultures, including Indian and Chinese. Buddhism, which is practiced by 95% of the population, is another important element. Over time, these aspects have created a unique culture that combines foreign and local traditions along with Buddhist values. Language. So Thai is the official language of Thailand. Apart from the national language, another 70 languages are spoken here, mainly by different minority groups. The language is written using the Thai alphabet, which evolved from the Khmer Cambodian script. It comprises of 44 consonants and 15 vowels. Clothing. Traditional Thai clothing is known as a chut Thai, which literally means Thai outfit. There are many types of costumes that can be worn by men, women, and children, and there are many variations by region and ethnic group. However, only the modern variations of these dresses are usually worn during celebrations and festivals. The chakri is probably the most common and popular dress. It consists of a long skirt, or sin, which is wrapped around the waist, and an upper garment, or sabai, which is a long piece of silk that is wrapped around the upper body and trails to the ground. The sawale is a formal dress that mainly is worn on royal events and weddings. It is somewhat similar to the chakri, and it consists of a long skirt with sabai over the shoulder. The pakaratan is the traditional attire for men, and it is a button-up shirt and a mandarin collar that is worn on formal occasions. It is worn with a rectangular piece of fabric, and that is wrapped around the waist. Before we move on, let's talk about what a tuk-tuk is. Tuk-tuks are three-wheeled motorcycle taxis that can be found in most Thai cities. Riding in a tuk-tuk is not very comfortable, but it is a true that Thai experience for tourists. Tuk-tuk drivers are often decorate their rides with lights and paint to get more attention, and the word tuk means cheap in Thai language. Prices for tuk-tuks rides need to be negotiated sometimes. Drivers charge a price that is even higher than a regular taxi, so tuk-tuks are not cheap at all. Let's move on to the next page here. On Muay Thai. Muay Thai, or Thai boxing, is Thailand's national sport. It is a martial art that was developed by the Siamese army in 18th century. Eventually, Muay Thai also became popular among ordinary people and is now considered a typical element of Thai culture. There are many Muay Thai events held across the country, and during a fight, traditional music is played to increase the excitement. Now let's talk about Thai food. Thai cuisine is famous all over the world. It is a unique cooking style that is characterized by a combination of 4 basic flavors, sour, sweet, salty, and spicy, into a harmonious dish. Another element of Thai cuisine is the use of various herbs and spices, which gives its dishes a unique flavor. Commonly used ingredients include basil, lemongrass, and ginger. Most common dishes in Thai cuisine today originate from 13th century. Some of these dishes borrow elements from neighboring countries such as India and China. The Chinese introduced noodles and steel wok, while Indian spices and flavors are used to prepare green, red, and yellow curries. Here are some typical Thai dishes. Pad Thai, which is a stir-fried noodle fish or dish prepared with chicken, peanuts, scrambled egg, and various other vegetables. The dish is widely available and is also a popular street food. Next here is Samtom, which is a green papaya salad. It is made from shredded unripe papaya, tomatoes, peanuts, and dried mini shrimps. Down here, at the bottom, is Tom Yum, which is a hot and sour soup that is usually cooked with shrimp. It is made from a wide variety of herbs and spices, including lime leaves, fish sauce, lemongrass, and chili peppers. Jang Kui Guan is a green curry that is prepared with coconut milk, green curry paste, palm sugar, and fish sauce. The dish is usually served with fish or seafood. And down here at the bottom right is Khao Ni Manyang, which is a dessert prepared with sliced mango and sticky rice topped with coconut milk. It is a popular treat across many countries in Southeast Asia. Now, down here, the last section that you need for your reading is the section on attractions. Let's proceed to the final part of our presentation on attractions after you completed the exercises and key concept questions.